Good evening and welcome to Savage Universe on All Places Pinnacle. I am JM, and with me tonight I have Peter of Pear Studio. Peter, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm psyched to be here. That music got me hyped for this.
I'm so glad you reached out because like the series of events is I said, hey, if there's any aces who have upcoming projects who want to be on Savage Universe, let me know. Which, whether you're an ace or swag or a fan or Savage Worlds Media, info at Savage Universe. We want more people on the show. And someone mentioned you in the stream, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to reach out. But before I even reached out, you were in the stream, and it was a great connect there.
Yeah, that was just really fortunate. And, I think it's, a testament to the Savage Worlds community, right? I got a quick Discord message from my friend Josh, who was watching your stream, and he said, you better email him because he wants people on the stream. So you better reach out to him right away. And so
yeah,
I did that, and then boom, 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 it all worked out. So shout out to Josh for helping me out with that.
Thanks, Josh. All right, so I always, because I'm one of those people who really enjoys getting the answer to this question.
Okay.
How'd you get into role playing, and then how'd you come into Savage Worlds?
Okay. The role playing game origin is, the very common shared origin, which was for me was Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition in the late 90s to like 2000 mark there, playing 2nd edition in the neighborhood with my friends and with like other members of my Boy Scout troop at camp in the summer when we were supposed to be doing something else.
And so that was Savage Worlds here, but over there I have 5 bookshelves worth of 2e stuff.
Yeah, so that's, and there was a lot of it, as I recall. It was the volume was incredible. But yeah, so we did that, and I started writing adventures like really early on because like you mentioned, there were a ton of books, but we couldn't afford any of them beyond the Player's Handbook and the Monster's Manual and the Dungeons Master Guide. I think we got a little later on there when we were, feeling flush with cash or something. But most of the time we just had to make up, what was going on. And so that was sort of probably the seed of this, even though I didn't know it then. Then life went, all sorts of different directions, and I didn't play a single TTRPG for 10 years. I did stay with, in gaming through the CCG, the card playing, aspect or end of things, on and off throughout that time, pretty seriously through like 2020.
What was your CCG of choice? Was it the clearly superior L5R or the more ubiquitous?
Yeah, it was actually. So I played L5R like very competitively for a lot of years.
Me too. Crane and Lion. Those were my.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was almost going to wear my crab T-shirt today, actually. But yeah, so I played crab for the whole time. Yeah.
I'm going to digress, but I have a friend who was such a crab player. During he had the crab mon tattooed with in Japanese underneath. He had crabs do it sideways because they walk sideways. And
if he attended Kotais or Grand Kotais or Gen Con, I probably bumped into him.
Probably played, maybe not played against each other, but we were probably at the same tournaments at some point.
Very likely.
I knew I liked you. Okay, anyway.
That's a great tangent because I never ever get to talk about that to anyone.
I love L5R. Not the new LCG version. I tried it and it's just not. It's not L5R.
I did it as competitively as you can possibly do it, and then I around the time of the pandemic starting, when everything was just kind of unavailable, that's when I exited, and I realized that I was way less stressed out when I didn't have to play 40 hours of cards a week in addition to my life and my job to stay relevant.
Fair. Okay, so then how'd you get back into gaming and Savage Worlds?
I was looking for something to do, and I remembered my fondness of Dungeons and Dragons, but I also knew it had become quite a beast in terms of getting involved. And I guess I just felt like it was too much for me to bite off and get into at that point in my mid-20s-ish. And so I looked for some systems that were lighter and alternative systems, and messed around with a few and landed on Savage Worlds. And I believe in the Explorer was
Yeah.
the first one I had. It was the small book. It was like very affordable. I remember that was
The
a big factor
$10
for me.
like
Yep.
entry. Yeah.
Yes. And I was like, this is great because it unlocked a toolkit that allowed me to access like the creative side of my brain and have a lot of freedom to run with it. And so I've always viewed Savage Worlds as what it is, which is a toolkit for creative game masters and creative players to
Yeah.
kind of achieve the type of game they want. And so I played it. And I'm from the Northeast here, where there is not a very big Savage Worlds presence at like the local conventions. There are kind of a few of us that represented at all the New England conventions, but it is growing. And I started writing my own scenarios and running the games. And during that time, it was the pandemic, so we were also running online in that time as well. I got to know the rules pretty well. I really liked the engagement of the community online, like being able to discuss everything and find answers.
We have a
and
great community.
the small family feel of
Mhm.
Peg was really attractive to me because that's the type of companies I want to engage with. And so, yeah, it just all snowballed. And then eventually I had written all these convention games that I was running for years and years. And some, my friends kind of pushed me and said, why don't you finally just publish these? They're done, just
Right. And
go
they've been
do
play
it.
tested.
Oh, heavily, yes. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. I enjoy all sorts of other type of gaming too, like board gaming and deck building games and things
Yeah.
like that we do at our monthly board game meetup here and things like that. But that's sort of the track that landed me where I am as a Ace licensee with Pinnacle.
Very cool.
Now.
So I have to ask, you mentioned conventions. There's going to be a Savage presence at Gamehole Con. Is there any chance that you will be at Gamehole Con?
When can you remind me when it is?
It's in the third week of October.
Third week of October. I won't be, because in October I travel for my actual job, like that I use to eat and stuff.
Yeah.
And I will be gone the last 2 weeks of October. Then I come home, and then I go right to a convention in Vermont called Carnage Con, which is a really awesome convention at a ski resort up there. And so I won't have any time in between that to even hardly get home and see my family before I have to take off. So.
All right. Well, that's fair. So let's talk about Pear Tree Studio and what you have, what you put out currently under your Ace license. We've got here, JM. Start on slide 1. All right, we'll start on slide 3. We're going to go backwards. Tell us about this one.
The Icelian Hybrid. So this is less than a month out right now. I think it was released maybe 3 weeks ago. It's doing great in terms of people engaging in it and liking it and giving me good feedback. It's a convention one-shot style game that I wrote probably the first version of probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I ran it at conventions very regularly over that 3 or 4 year period. And it evolved during that time. And it is a investigative sci-fi with a little bit of a horror bent, role play heavy, but not without conflict. And I just got such good kind of feelings from it and feedback from it, running it in person over the years, that it was an easy one for me to say, yeah, I think I'm going to actually put that together and publish it. That work was made really easy by having the wonderful Carl Kiesler help me with layout, trade dress, and all sorts of other, seriously, to Carl. He just makes me look like such a better creator than I actually am. And I also, there's also custom commissioned art for all the characters and some NPCs in this one too. So this was my first stab at working with a contracted artist for a project as well.
Here's some of the art from here, and Buff Dragon says it's got an awesome extra mechanic in it. Can you elaborate on that? Oh, cool.
I'm glad somebody knows about that. Thank you, Buff Dragon. So I'm not much of a game designer. I'm a writer. I'm not a game designer from the mechanic standpoint, but every now and then I do something for one of my own games where I just tweak something that usually to drive the particular tension of that scenario. In this case, it's a mechanic that we called cinematic resources. Because during playtesting, we ran into a lot of instances where players were kind of saying like, well, how much air do we have left? Well, how much fuel do we have left? Well, how much gravity and life support do we have left? And there was like a lot of questions, and they were pretty important questions for the players to know, to kind of be able to have the agency to make decisions in this scenario. But it bogged things down, keeping track of, you've got this much more fuel and this much more air and this much more temperature to keep you alive. So we condensed it into basically one die pool that is owned by the player characters at the table. And it is established. If you check out the rules, you can see, that it can also be applied to, any other Savage Worlds game, not just particularly this encounter, by just redressing it sort of to your particular genre. But basically, you are in control of a pool of D6 dice. And the more, the better. You can set some limits on that. And the less you have, the worse. So think of it as sort of just a kind of a 0 to 100% sort of range. And as those are going away, your situation is becoming more dire. Now, at certain points in the scenario, the GM will call out for a resource die roll, which means that one of the player characters needs to scoop up all the remaining resource dice and roll them all, and then we remove any rolls that result in a 1 from that pool. So, for example, if you had 6 dice in the pool and you rolled all 6, and 2 of those landed on 1s, you'd be down to 4 dice in the resource
I love
pool.
mechanics like this.
I also provide a table in the first couple of pages of the Icelian Hybrid that says, if you're at 10 or more resource dice, this is the situation aboard the ship. If you're at 8 to 9, this is the situation. If you're at 6 and 7, this is. If you're at 4 and 5, you better start figuring something out, et cetera, all the way to, very catastrophic results. And you can control the severity of that as a GM. You can make your own result chart for whatever scenario you're using. It works great for journeys, which is not the case in this one, but like long journeys where you have like desert crossings and things like that, where there's a bunch of stuff that has to be kept track of. And it really keeps the tension at the table, which is something I take very seriously in the games that I write. It's just my personal style is I only run one shots. 99% of my gaming life is one shots at a convention. So I have 4 hours. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I have like 4 hours with new people most of the time that I've never met to really get them on the edge of their seat and like what I'm doing and have a good time.
Yeah.
So when you compare me side by side with some other GMs that are really good at pacing and chapter and continuation and things that I'm personally not that great at because of my experience, I think I probably seem pretty high strung compared to them, but it's enjoyable. And the resource dice really get like the players standing up around the table and they're all pointing fingers like, I'm not rolling them. I don't want you guys to be mad at me, and things like that. So it's a great way to really crank up the tension. And it's swingy, just like Savage Worlds is.
Yeah, no, 100%.
You could get through a resource die roll perfectly fine. It happens, or it could be just catastrophic.
Yeah, you'd roll all once.
And so we do have some catches in there for like certainly in the first 5 minutes of a scenario. You don't want to go from we're playing to we're all dead. So there are some guidelines on kind of how to mitigate that. And there are some chances for them to add or gain a resource die through actions they take throughout the scenario. So they might be able to do something particularly crafty with the inner workings of the ship that allow them to be more efficient with the power and add an extra resource die to the pool.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, I love this art.
Thanks.
Yeah,
that was I commissioned that from the artist's name is Danilo Garcia. And he worked with me really well on just basically my kind of crude descriptions of each character and what I kind of thought they'd look like and the different iterations that you have to go through back and forth with an artist. One thing I really learned there is if you're a writer type of person that thinks you can put everything into words, beautifully, and then you send it to a visual type person, it does not translate. 100%. It's very difficult. So I had to learn to like find pictures and circle, this briefcase type thing and this type of boot, and things like that to try to work in a more visual fashion. So that was a big learning curve
I
for me, since I'm pretty new to this.
I discovered that one of the cool things about it though is the artist ends up helping me world build, or I may have a vision of somebody and they come in and they may put a trinket and I'm like, whoa, what's that? I need to, or a tattoo or something that I didn't request or didn't see at first. Or my friend Bob is great at doing this. I say that he rips images straight out of my brain, but he'll add little details and I'll go back and like redesign monsters and be like, well, what are those little details? How do I add them back in so that they're mechanically relevant? And I love that. It's like this symbiotic creative experience.
You get all these little seeds that you just weren't anticipating, or you didn't even know you wanted, and then you go like, oh well, he put that cool communicator in the captain's hand there and I didn't ask him to, but that's pretty all right, let's work that in.
Right.
And you kind of go from there.
Well, and then you have apologies for not having the proper tag on there, but this is now a silver bestseller. The Shadow
as
of
of
the
just
Sacred
recently.
Hills.
Yeah. So
Agreed,
that's
John Dew. Bob is excellent. Tell us about this.
So Shadows of the Sacred Hills is the first release that I put out as a Pinnacle Ace licensee. It came out in February of this year, so that she'll just tell you how kind of brand new I am at this. And it's a Weird West adventure. It is, again, very investigation heavy. There is basically a crime afoot and a conspiracy, and the party is motivated to assist someone in kind of figuring out what's going on and avoid kind of further bloodshed or further calamitous events without spoiling too much there. It plays a lot on interplay between the characters and their motivations and sort of what their fears are and things like that. And again, it's designed to fit in about a 4-hour window. I mean, you can run it as fast or slow as you'd like to, but that's sort of the time frame and the pacing that I had in mind when I put it together. Oh, I lost you. I can't hear you.
Buff Dragon says it's a great sideline to any Deadlands campaign. That it's fun. And Ted, I agree with Ted. Like, congrats on the silver bestseller. That's fantastic.
Oh, thanks. And yeah, I've had several GMs tell me that they wanted to twist it around and slot it into existing Deadland games because it is Weird West. I will specify it is not part of the Deadlands IP. Obviously I was very careful to check with Shane and make sure this was kind of cool and have him read it over, and he gave me the blessing and we were all good. But it does take place in a West that is scary and strange. And so obviously you can, without too much work, you can probably blend those things somewhat together.
So let me ask you this. Why did you decide to go Ace license as opposed to something like the Swag license? And good afternoon, Padre. Welcome to the chat. Yeah,
that's a good question, and I thought about it for quite a while. But really, the big thing was when I decided to look into doing this, I immediately went to the people I admired who were already doing it. Awesome. Chief among those people were, Carl Kiesler, Tracy Sizemore, J.C. Thompson, Tim Early. Those are people who I basically harass on the internet for information and help.
But they're so friendly and they're so willing to help. I don't know that you can call it harassing. Can we just talk about how excited I am for Han Cluster coming out? Like,
I had to kind of tell myself to take it easy and send less messages to her because I felt like maybe I was being a pain in the butt. Because I was like, if you want to send me anything at all to read, or I'll go play test it for you, or this or that, I'm been following it since all through the Savage Interludes podcast arc and all of that. And I think Tracy's approach to writing has also helped me and inspired me a little, because I don't want to speak for her, but I think it would be fair to say she takes a interpersonal connection level that I would say is ratcheted up more than what the average you would see in adventure writing is. And I think that that's extremely extremely interesting to me, and makes for like really interesting moments at the game table. So and all of those people that I just mentioned are ACE licensees. So when I was talking to all of them, I was kind of, the decision was, well, if I want to do what they're doing and they're ACE licensees, then that's where I'm going to go. And that was how that decision was made.
That's awesome. Well, I know we talked a little bit before the show that there may be something in the future, but I think we'll save that for.
Okay.
We'll have you back on the show and talk about it more.
Sure.
So I always ask. John Doom, I agree. Carl Kiesler is so nice and such a great guy.
Yeah,
it helps calm the anger that I have at the production level he brings to his one shots at conventions. I have people at my table who now are like, "Did you see what Carl put together for his latest game table?" I'm like, "We're playing a game right here, and I have a little bit of Dwarven Forge, a little bit of terrain," and they're like, "Yeah, but if Carl Kiesler was doing this, Tink knows that it's like it's the little grain of sand that just keeps." I'm fine. I'm fine.
Are you?
Civil Savage says it's less harassing and more light stalking. I mean, what's a little light stalking between friends, right?
Yeah, right. I'll go with that. That makes me seem better.
Seem totally normal, right?
Yeah,
I'm with you. So
absolutely.
I always ask this: what is it like for you? What is the thing about Savage Worlds, mechanically, however you want to do this? What is the thing that you're like, this is the mechanic that I love, and it makes Savage Worlds my go-to game?
I think it is not one specific mechanic. It is the fact that I can take from the rule book what I want and keep things moving. I don't have to stop.
Yeah.
Again, because I'm almost always on a time crunch, you're going to sit with me for 4 hours, of which solid play time, it's really probably only going to be about 3 at a convention, with breaks and different things that are kind of going
Intro
on.
and
All of that. So I basically got 3 hours to try to give you a really great game experience. And so I have absolutely zero time to be looking up anything or referring to anything, or having a debate with anyone. And so Savage Worlds allows me to keep things moving. I reread the core rulebook every January. I just do it just because every time I see something that I've been doing wrong, pretty much every time I read it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the rule book, I can't remember. I did the math in one of my recent rereads. The actual number of pages you need to read to run the game mechanically, it was like 30 something pages of the whole thing. There's lots of other tables and gear chart and extra information and bestiary and things like that in there. But it was like 30 something pages. If you just read those, you'd be off and running and playing. Yep. And that shows that the concision and the efficiency of the rules is very strong.
Yeah.
And so for me, that allows me to just keep things moving, keep people engaged, reduce the amount of downtime between player at the table, and just get that overall pulpy, cinematic, role play heavy, but still lots of die rolls going on, type of gaming experience that I enjoy. So that's the thing that I create,
So I've often said this, like looking back to like the original Deadlands and then Reloaded and Explorer Edition and Suede and even the different updates to Suede. It feels to me like the design team at Pinnacle has something's done when I can't take anything else away from it, not when I have to add more things to it. And even if you're looking at all the different iterations that we're going through with like the Sci-Fi Companion, it's this, when I've refined it enough that it's simple and as concise and well written as possible, then something's done, as opposed to, well, now I've got this massive new thing to bolt on. That's what I love about Savage Worlds. And Ted, I agree with you. I am always excited to see what this community brings next. Like, that's why I love talking with everybody who's doing things in the Savage World space. I mean, that's the joy of my job. I get to get on here and talk with guys like Peter. And we're going to have Tracy back on when she launches the Han cluster. Just letting you guys know that's coming.
And shout out to the Ted mentioned Savior of Hollow Oak there, which is a Holler adventure, which I actually ran at a convention. I ran like 2 or 3 slots of that at a convention last year or the year before, whenever it became available. And it was so much fun. That was great.
So good.
Yeah.
So,
and to tag off what you were saying about not minimalist design, but editing to a point of efficiency, I wouldn't categorize. To me, Savage Worlds doesn't fall into the minimalist RPG bucket because that's sort of reductive in some ways.
Yes,
and Savage
100%.
Worlds is very robust in the fact that it can handle many things. So it has to have that framework, that skeleton that can handle a lot of different things being thrown at it. So it still has to be a very resilient system that can stand up and hold true. But I come from a design background in my real world job, and I know that 2 of the design rules that are the biggest, most effective design rules in building and design in my industry are, number 1, don't do anything if you don't have to, and number 2, take stuff away, as you were mentioning, and kind of make it as lean and trim all the fat off of that thing as you can to make it as efficient as it can be, especially with a setting agnostic rule set where all you're going to get are creative GMs because it's setting agnostic. So they're going to put all that fat back on every chance they get. They just
give
need
us the bones.
And the bones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So if you had one piece of advice to give to Savage Worlds people who are looking at becoming an ACE licensee, what would you give them?
Talk to other ACE licensees, have phone calls with them or buy them cups of coffee if you can, and establish a brain trust of people who are where you already want to be. Because what you'll do is you'll save yourself running into all the speed bumps that they already ran into. You'll still invent your own and trip over those.
100%.
Yeah, but they will save you a whole bunch of just little aggravating mistakes in the process that really add up to a lot of energy over the course of a year. And so, just reach out. The other thing is the Savage Worlds community is so nice that you can reach out to somebody who's, writing and is an ACE licensee or is writing for PEG or whatever, and they're going to take the time to answer you. They might even take the time to read what you're working on and give you feedback. Many have, in my case, just out of the goodness of their heart. And so that would be the first piece of advice. And then the second would be get ready for it to be 7 or 8 times more work than you thought it would be, to really get something to a in my opinion, like a fully professional presentation level. Just expect it to be way more work than you thought,
especially your first time through. You're gonna hit a point where you don't know what you don't know, and man, it can be demoralizing. So if you just go in prepared for, hey, I'm going to hit some speed bumps that I don't even know exist, you're going to be fine.
Yep. Yeah, I sure did. I with Shadows of the Sacred Hills, I avoided a lot of things by reaching out like I just recommended, but I still hit a whole bunch of stuff, and I invented a whole bunch of problems for myself, by working in incorrect order and things like that. From the things I learned just from February, or well, actually it was December, January when I was producing that, to the release of the Icelian hybrid, which was like 3 weeks ago, it went much better. It still had problems, but it went much smoother than my first run through. And I'm hoping my next project, I'll even learn some more and, see what's next.
Awesome. Well, Peter, thanks for joining us. This was a ton of fun. And again, I don't get to talk to a ton of L5R players anymore. that was lightning in a bottle, man. Like that was.
Ping me anytime. We'll talk.
We'll
talk
reminisce
Rokugan.
about. Oh man, and can I also just say 4th edition L5R role playing was like just the art and the mechanics and the books, everything about that game was perfect Rokugan for me.
Yeah, I'm standing above like, I don't know, 10,000 cards right now. So.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much. And if you are involved in Savage Worlds in any way, if you put together some fan material, if you are a member of the Savage Worlds Media Network, meaning you talk about Savage Worlds somewhere on the internet, if you are a swag author or an ACE licensee, please reach out to me. Go to savageuniverse.com down at the bottom, info@Savage Universe. Email me. I will have you on the show if you need me to write articles, if you need me to put stuff in the newsletter. I love signal boosting Savage Worlds fans. So please give me material to signal boost. So, thanks. Rigger Raven said both of your products are in his cart. That's fantastic.
Thank you, sir. If you like them, I hope you enjoy them. Leave a review if you like them.
We'll be back in the next couple of weeks as more licensees reach out. So I think I've got next week off, a much-deserved little vacation, and hopefully we'll be back sometime in June with some more Savage Universe. Until next time, go play some Savage Worlds, and may all your dice ace.